We have all seen two very different types of students. One studies exhaustively for 10 hours, highlighting every line, while the other masters the exact same material in 4. If the famous 10,000-hour rule were strictly true, the person putting in the most time would always win, but they rarely do. The disconnect happens because most of us fall into the trap of naive practice. We show up and repeatedly execute the things we already know how to do, operating under the assumption that sheer volume equals improvement. Psychologists call this state automaticity. Your brain essentially goes on autopilot. Because the task no longer requires active cognitive effort, your neural pathways stop adapting. You aren't getting better, you are just logging hours. This is why passive activities like rereading textbooks or scanning your old notes are so deceptive. They create an illusion of fluency. The material feels familiar, so you feel productive, but you're cementing existing limitations. Clocking hours means nothing if the structure of your routine only serves to make your current bad habits permanent. To actually improve, we have to look at how experts train. Psychologist Dr. Anders Ericsson spent his career studying expert performers and identified a specific methodology they use called deliberate practice. Instead of mindless repetition, this is a systematic approach designed specifically to target and overload your personal weaknesses. This curriculum guide demonstrates how medical schools utilize this for future doctors. Students don't just read about procedures, they engage in intense clinical simulations. They take repeated stabs at peripheral line placement on plastic arms and resuscitate simulation mannequins over and over. This textbook excerpt from cognitive psychologists Robert and Elizabeth Bjork outlines the biological necessity of this struggle, calling it desirable difficulties. As their subtitle points out, making things hard on yourself is actually the exact trigger your brain needs to encode new information. An amateur structures their routine to avoid friction because they want to feel competent. An expert engineers friction on purpose to force their brain to adapt. Pushing your brain out of its comfort zone into a state of calibrated struggle is a prerequisite for mastery. To see how we can engineer this friction, let's look at a student preparing for a major math exam. Most students use blocked practice, where they solve a cluster of the exact same type of problem in a row. You do 10 addition, then 10 subtraction problems. The brain learns the pattern, allowing you to plug and chug without thinking about the strategy. The superior alternative is interleaving. Instead of grouping similar problems, you mix different problem types in an alternating sequence. Because no two consecutive questions are the same, your brain cannot rely on a repetitive pattern. It has to actively choose the correct strategy for each new prompt, exactly as it will have to do during the real exam. Research shows that simply rearranging the sequence of problems can nearly double student learning on exams. You trade a little short-term comfort for significant gains in long-term retention. Pushing through all this calculated friction only works if you have a reliable way to measure whether you are actually improving. This brings us to retrieval practice, the ultimate internal feedback loop. Where reading is a passive intake of information, retrieval practice forces you to generate the answers from your own mind. The neurological testing effect reveals that the physical act of pulling information out of your memory thickens neural pathways more effectively than passively taking information in. Self-testing provides immediate, objective feedback. It shatters the illusion of fluency by instantly exposing the exact gaps in your knowledge. While we often view testing as a progress report on past learning, it is actually a generative tool that constructs future memory. Most practice routines fail because they prioritize comfort, focus on what is already known, and lack objective feedback. To fix this, build a 4-step protocol. 1. Identify your exact point of failure. 2. Focus intensely, stripping away distractions. 3. Feedback. Objectively measure your results. 4. Refine. Adjust your technique, elevate the difficulty, and restart the cycle. By constantly moving the goalposts of difficulty just beyond your current capabilities, this continuous loop prevents arrested development and forces ongoing adaptation. Gaining extensive experience in a field does not automatically lead to expertise. Without the intentional engineering of friction, development often reaches a plateau that years of mindless repetition cannot break. Mere practice makes permanent, but only deliberate practice makes perfect. Look at your own routine today. Identify one specific weakness, engineer some friction into your process, and take conscious control of your own math.